Hello, friends. Well, it's the end of your inner world as you know it. I mean, serious Pluto tax here. And one of the 12 signs is going to be so different, I think you're not going to recognize them in the end. I'll tell the answer of that and also your soul horoscopes and zodiac weather coming up. Hello, friends. Welcome to Soul Horoscopes and the Zodiac Weather, brought to you by Namaste Today. I'm your host, Sensei Christopher Witecki. I'm sort of a soul guidance counselor, really. I'm an astrologer. I'm also a philosopher. I also love seeing the stories of people, and I put them all together every week to help you day by day get through the biggest transition Earth has ever gone through. This is not sensationalized TV, friends. This is the truth, looking at the astrology and the backgrounds and what has been happening. We're about to go through a change that we will never recognize Earth again, I believe, in about 3 to 5 years, but it's this next year that makes everything really happen. Before we do a little housekeeping, hey, if you're watching on YouTube, please be kind and do subscribe. Hit the bell button so you're notified when something happens. And please like this video. And if you don't mind, leave a comment. Now, if you're watching on any of the other social medias, please also leave a comment. This is the only way the algorithm makes us feel like we're important and introduces us to other people. We appreciate it. Thank you ahead of time. And now with that, it's time to talk about this week. Let's do to our main headline of the week. It's time for our sun signs and the headlines. Our headline this week, kiss your Scorpios goodbye. That's because Scorpios have the most power, you see, when it comes to transforming things. Their hearts understand boundaries like no other human beings do on the planet. Just ask any Scorpio what they're not telling you. It's mostly everything. Now, this is a great skill not everybody has, and that's what this week is about. Recently, we've been doing and talking about in our Mega Monthly Zodiac Report with Robbie, my co-host. Her and I this month went into a deep dive on how the world's about to change, incredibly so, due to a number of factors astrologically. We can't get into all those right now, but I will tell you that in this next week, as we begin the Sun in Scorpio, we're going to be implementing some deep changes that we've been making for a long time. Each of the 12 signs has been working on what we call our karma, which is our past life memories. Basically, they're still disturbing us. And this year we have faced all of those. And so when we come to the sign of Scorpio, which is step 0 in my step system, this is where you go to basically ground zero with yourself and then eventually ground zero with the world. It's a do-over. It's an inner re-evolution, really, of yourself. Now, having learned so much about yourself, it's now time to ask a question, well, what can you do going forward? I mean, now that we know better, now that I know exactly what my problems are, now that I can't lie to myself anymore like I used to, or cover it up with being busy or whatever my excuse was, now I've really got to get to the brass tacks of it all and make a change on the inside. And the problem is that the change is on the inside. If you have a hard time holding up a boundary with someone in the world, it's because you're not holding up one with yourself on the inside. And it's because you're afraid. Maybe you don't want to feel something. Maybe it's something that you've been trying to avoid. Maybe it's something you're unaware of. You just completely have hidden it from yourself. But we're at a point now where it's that deep part of yourself that you have to actually face this upcoming week. Now, I joke in the beginning about one sign won't be recognizable. I think that's the Aries, actually, just because they have Scorpio in the 8th. I mean, what that means is they have the same powers as Scorpio do when it comes to changing, and they've really healed in many ways. So we'll talk about that in the Aries horoscope and get deep on what that means. But what it comes from is Pluto, actually. Pluto is a very slow planet, and it tells us sort of the hour hand on the galactic clock. It tells us what hour we are at. And Pluto went direct last week, which meant that our hand started moving forward again. And the insistence right now is that we must love ourselves. That may sound overly simplified, but the truth is that going back in the planets to before Christ, our team at Serious Joy cannot find a time when the planets were saying, love yourself. I mean, they would for occasionally a minute, but it wouldn't sustain like it is now. And now that's basically the brass tacks bottom line. The bottom line is that every person on the planet must love themselves much more than they ever have, and they have to find exactly where it matters most. That's where our guidance will help you with your soul horoscope. We'll tell you for each of 12 signs where that is and give some of our SJ subscribers some tips on how to do it. But understand that this is a sensitive topic because what it involves, if you don't know, is that you have to really be knowing how you feel all the time, which means that we can no longer be denying our feelings, which means that we have to be looking at those feelings we don't want to feel. So you're going to have to get really personal with yourself in a way that you've never prepared for in your whole life. And this is the moment that's about to start with this 0 degree Scorpio. In some ways, some of my coaches who've helped me through the years would say it's time to pull yourself up by your britches. And that does mean facing those things that we're all a little weird about facing. So each day, as we go from this week, we're going to start with step 2, Scorpio, and we're going to end up with step 8. So that bracket from steps 2 to 8 are really the decision of whether or not you trust yourself or whether or not you don't. That's what it comes down to. Can I trust myself? Can I hold up the line when it's really important? Can I be there for myself along the way? And because it's so private, most people don't let people in this deep. This is the part of you that will ask yourself if you're okay to drive. This is the part that ask yourself if you're really crazy. This is the deepest part of yourself that says things are okay or things are not okay. That's the first 2 to 8 degrees of Scorpio. And so it's going to be a little sensitive, I have to say, going up. And one thing I'll say before we move into our next segment is that, amongst your friends out there, just realize everyone in the world is really vulnerable right now. Everyone is feeling a little heated around the collar. Everyone has inflamed issues in their life, and everyone's going to try to hide it. So I think it'd be nice for us all just to be nice to each other this week. And that'd be my hope and my prayer for this particular week. So you keep streaming now. We're going to have your Zodiac Weather Weekly Digest. And after that, we'll get into the Soul Horoscope for all 12 signs. Keep watching.
Thanks, Sensei. This Zodiac Weather Report covers from Saturday, October 25th to Friday, October 31st, 2025, and is proudly sponsored by SIRIUS.academy. Are you searching for deeper meaning in your life? Do you feel like your purpose is just out of reach? Sirius Joy's 40 Days of Truth and Purpose has officially returned to the Academy, and it is not too late to sign up and uncover who you were born to be. Plus, Gwen English returns with her Oracle card class to complement. So what are you waiting for? Enroll today at siriusjoy.academy. Looking ahead of your weekend forecast, now that energy has been introduced, we muddle through sensitive feelings on Saturday to turn towards the positively curious on Sunday. Let's take a look. On Sunday, it's cloudy yet inspired as step 2, or the moon, rules the day, feeling all the feels on what to protect inside. A moon in Sagittarius, however, brings optimism and a hint of adventure. Before packing those bags, intend that I protect feeling safe and affirm today that I am surrendering to the adventure. At 5:16 p.m., Mercury in Scorpio trines Saturn retrograde at 26 Pisces, giving thoughts the stability they need to ponder the next phase. On Sunday, it's sunny and excited as step 3 leans into curious expansion. The root intention is I protect my self-realization as a moon in Sagittarius shifts into Capricorn, providing optimism to feel the way that reflects you best. Affirm that I am believing in my experience as you are choosing the best way for you. Don't forget to protect what you wish to take along. Taking a sneak peek at the upcoming week, we have breakdown to breakthroughs on Monday, big feelings requiring big acceptance on Wednesday, a test of faith on Thursday, and the week wraps with a decision on Friday about what is worth taking and what is not. Let's drill down. On Monday, it's quiet with a chance of earthquakes, as 4 Scorpio is there to show you the door on what is worth protecting in the new evolution of you. The root intention is I protect my attachment, as the affirmation for the day is I am choosing my heart this time. Fight for that. A moon in Capricorn lends stability and structure in deciding how to feel, so use it to ride the wave. Tuesday is partly cloudy and clearing as step 5 Scorpio gives the power of knowing where the walls are in order to find the door. Intend that I protect new thinking, as today you are using thoughts to benefit you, and affirm that I am fleshing out the future, mindful of the present, as a trine from Mars and Scorpio to Jupiter and Cancer may inspire you to build Rome in a day. Just stay present and start with those new thoughts. Wednesday is windy and detached, as step 6 demands acceptance of your relationship with you. Big one. Intend that I protect self-acceptance today and affirm that I am opening to the fullness of my feelings to process. A moon in Aquarius can provide the detachment needed to receive fully. The skies light up, though, with Mercury's ingress into Sagittarius, beginning by trining Neptune at 29 Pisces and ending by facing off with Uranus at 0 Gemini. So temper whatever the mind comes up with today with feelings first. Thursday is overcast with showers for 7 Scorpio, bringing a test of faith in yourself today. Intend that I protect keeping the faith as you affirm that I am surrendering fear to trust. Take any issues to spirit and allow for that faith to grow, as at 6:06 p.m., Mercury sextiles Pluto at 1 Aquarius, giving easy thoughts transformative power in the name of love. So stay plugged into what love is for you to see the changes. Friday is cloudy with a chance of drizzle as Sun hits step 8 Scorpio, asking for that commitment to the self that will protect the future, but may require a letting go. Intend that I protect my discipline and affirm that I am committing to elevating my emotional tone, as a moon in Aquarius into Pisces brings the logic of detachment into deep awareness of feelings. So use that emotional intelligence to make whatever you are deciding okay for you today. So while the week can be a little spooky, use that sensitivity to create safety for those feelings in order to know the way forward. Back to you, Sensei.
This Scorpio season, embark on a journey of self-discovery. Create your soul manifesto. Unveil your purpose. Live your truth. Welcome to 40 Days of My Truth and Purpose. Enrolling now, only at Sirius Joy Academy.
Hi, I'm Gwen English. I'm an artist, astrologer, teacher, and lifelong practitioner of the intuitive arts. Join me during 40 Days of Truth and Purpose on a creative adventure with the Heartspeak Oracle, a creative path to self-love. Heartspeak Oracle is a guided creative course designed to help you connect with your higher self, inner wisdom, and divine guidance. As a companion to Christopher Witecki's 40 Days of Truth and Purpose, this journey invites you to create your own intuitive oracle deck. No art experience required. If you can cut, glue, and open your heart, you're ready to listen and let your heart speak, connecting you to your divine truth and purpose. Join me this Scorpio season as we dive deep into the magic of truth and purpose with the Heartspeak Oracle. I look forward to seeing you.
I help people to kind of get in touch with their gut, which some people believe is your first brain now, right?
Right.
And what the coolest part about what I do is that it's not like I sell anybody on anything. Like, people come to me because they know that they need to get to me, either for higher self work, colon hydrotherapy work, how to have like living food in your world, how to create your purpose, how to tap your intuition, how to align chakras, systemic like energy moving through the body. I take care of people to help them to realign their integrity within themselves for their mind, body, and spirit. And the integrity is really the right relationship. It's not like a moral judgment or anything. It's just right relationship. And I feel like a lot of people in this world know that they're not in right relationship and aren't always sure how to get back into it.
Hello, friends. Welcome back to Soul Horoscopes for all 12 signs, our favorite part. Well, this week, although very complicated, I think, in what will happen in your life, because these are old issues and old boundaries, I want to keep this horoscope very simple. And let's just relate it to the title of the show. This month, we're calling the month of Scorpio, Weathering Uncomfortable Growth. And I feel like that's going to happen this week. As the sun is in the early degrees of Scorpio, each of the 12 signs is going to have to look at some personal boundaries with themselves and get very brutally honest with themselves. You're going to have to really look at whether or not the boundaries are serving your comfort or serving your greater good. And I'll talk about for each of the signs, which it likely is now, and some remedies of how to overcome them and change them and enforce them, which would be good. Another aspect is embracing time and space as friends. Time and space are now our friends. That's a nice way of saying you got to have faith. And this week, there will be a test of faith. Mercury will trine Neptune at 29 degrees Pisces retrograde, which will be a quantum test of faith about whether or not your boundaries will hold up. The problem is the mind is in the future about these things, And so it's not something the heart can necessarily endorse. You've got to literally have faith and not let your mind go there. So we'll talk about that trine for all 12 signs. And then lastly, I want to talk about Mercury moving into Sagittarius. With Mercury moving into Sag, it means that as you start changing boundaries, you also start changing your mind about what you believe in yourself. And by changing what you believe in yourself, you start to change what your story will be, what your narrative will be, and of course, what your outcome will be. So we are basically in a position this week where we could change our entire lives simply because we change our personal boundaries and our own comfort zones with ourselves. Because it has a ripple down effect to where it affects boundaries with others, and then it affects the story you tell yourself, and then it affects what your belief is and what your purpose is. So it's big change in a small amount of time. So as always, let's start off with our purebreds of the zodiac, the Aries. Aries, you are, of course, in the most intimate part of your life right now because Scorpio is what rules your 8th house. This is why I think you potentially could have the biggest changes out of all the 12 signs because you have the power of Scorpio naturally with Scorpio in the 8th. It means that you are mostly based on defensive boundaries for the most part, given where your ego used to be, much more battle-based as an ego, much more push-based. And so I think as a result, you've created boundaries that protect, but not necessarily allow you to thrive. So as the sun moves from step 2 to 8 Scorpio this week, you're looking at your boundaries around your feelings, how close you are to your own feelings, whether or not you embrace your own beliefs, whether or not you honor and protect where you belong with yourself and you're on the right side of yourself. Your thoughts with yourself, are they protected or are they just loosey-goosey? Your ability to accept and receive and your ability to forgive yourself, your faith in general, and overall the decisions you make about yourself. So this is basically your inner core integrity. This is the part of yourself that you will check when you wonder if you're okay, if you have to go to the hospital. That core part of yourself is what is under new transformation. Now, with all that said, you have also done a tremendous amount of work to try to expand your values in life, to increase your money revenue. And, with Uranus dipping back into Taurus, it means that you're going to go for it one more time when it comes to an idea for abundance or profiting. So I think you have no choice but to realize that the boundaries you have now do not necessarily value you the way you are to be valued. That is the evidence you cannot ignore. That when you draw a certain line with yourself around fear, let's say, or lack of one, or you allow certain feelings to go on, you don't put an end to those, and you just sort of wallow in them, that your overall self-worth goes down, your productivity goes down, and obviously the paycheck goes down as well. That's evidence you just cannot ignore. So be easy on yourself and be clear about what feels comfortable, and realize that of all the 12 signs, you're the one most poised to deal with discomfort more than any. You really can deal with that, unhappy position and get the job done. Now, with the trine I was speaking to, Mercury will, at 26 degrees Scorpio, begin to trine Neptune retrograde at 29 degrees. And what this means is that your mind is actually way ahead in thinking about how life may change. And it's thinking about how life may change and tying it into your faith in life in general. So whatever it is that you're contemplating at the very base level of your life, it's likely going to turn into a huge realization that you're going to have tremendous faith in the universe to choose you as somehow special in this event. Of course, you are special as soon as you decide that you are special. But nonetheless, your mind will be calculating exactly where the lines are and whether or not that leads to faith. And then lastly, with Mercury and Sagittarius, don't be too surprised if you don't start to wonder exactly what to believe at all. In fact, there may be some moments where it's very hard for you to understand what you believe. Starting on Wednesday, you're going to find that you are now questioning your belief in yourself and realizing that things you've told yourself in the past did not really add up to where you're going now. And so it's not that you're full of shit, and it's not that you've been kidding yourself. It's that you've frankly been operating at a whole different level. So stay open and keep an open mind because this is an area that Mercury's in shadow. It's going to return over this one more time. Hello, Taurus. For you, it's going to be an interesting week because you have entered into your annual Mirage transit. That's right. Scorpio for you has to do with how you relate to yourself, how you relate to others, and how you relate to long-term projects. And being Tauruses and the pace at which they work, everything is a long-term project, right? Now, you use boundary consciousness to separate yourself from your partnerships and your companions, but also we have to look at the core of this, which is going to be how you relate to yourself. The lines you draw with yourself, in other words, do you discipline yourself? Do you not? Are you after yourself when you make a mistake? Are you not? How far do you go with yourself? Do you punish yourself? All these sort of rules of engagement with yourself. This is where you're going to do the most private, intimate work this week. You're going to probably come to realize that there are some things that you're letting yourself get away with And there's some things that you are not letting yourself get away with, basically. And you're going to realize that there needs to be some new decisions about where to draw the line with yourself. This is from how you feel about yourself all the way to the decisions you make about yourself. What goes into them? And are you really protecting yourself? And are you honoring self-love? Are these boundaries the most loving boundaries you can possibly have for yourself? And I already know, as a Taurus, the answer is no. They're not. I failed that one. So the hard part is going to be, you're going to be uncomfortable when you kind of look in the mirror this week like you never have, and you see certain flaws in your design of how you protected or not protected, how you've been too free, or how you basically have failed to pursue, or let's say uphold the boundaries that you have had with yourself this whole time. Now, with that said, all this is going to be a big character builder. That's right. Because of Uranus now back in Taurus at 29 degrees, you are now moving to a place where you are modifying your character and taking it to a higher level. The good news is you're going to become more strong and more charismatic and more convincing. But the bad news is you're going to have to look at a lot of the shadow of where you have ignored yourself, betrayed yourself, or allowed yourself to be betrayed. Allowed yourself to be betrayed, because unfortunately you have done that. Now, with Mercury trining into Neptune at 29 degrees Pisces, it does mean that you're going to probably be involved in some sort of relationships and contemplating or negotiating a relationship that's directly related to your ability to create an image in public. Your image in public is now being tested one more time with Neptune in this place. And you are facing certain karmic trends in public, so to speak, or with the public, in order to determine a new angle for your spiritual mission with the public. Because as we said last week, Tauruses are very much spiritually involved with the public. That's where they play out their karma and where they do their good deeds. So with Mercury trining this, particularly Mercury now in its shadow period, you're energetically, your mind is looking at things that it might have to look at one more time. In other words, how does certain relationships and certain patterns in relationships relate to your actual faith in the universe and faith in yourself, and also faith, of course, in your place in the world, your success. Then lastly, the point is with Mercury moving to Sagittarius. You know, because you're a step 10, you have to do everything twice, right? So when the sun's in Scorpio, you work on boundaries from the perspective of relationships. And then when the sun is in Sagittarius, you work on boundaries from the perspective of boundaries. And so when Mercury moves into Sagittarius, you'll now enter the pre-retrograde shadow, and you'll be beginning to think now for a different belief about where to draw the line with yourself. Perhaps you're using the wrong philosophy. Perhaps you're borrowing a school of thought from a relative that did not really do well themselves. Whatever the case is, it's time to think differently. And this isn't something you get the first time. Be open. You're going to go over this idea with the retrograde at least 3 times. Hello, Gemini. Welcome back. Well, for the twins of the Zodiac, you are this week looking at something very personal, which with you has to do with your lifestyle and your health. It's really your body and your relationship to your body that Geminis are the most intimate, believe it or not. And the way you treat your body and where you draw the lines with your body is really indicative of how you draw lines in general. In other words, if you're hard on your body, you're hard on other people. That's just the way it sort of works, because your body and your daily life sort of determine where all boundaries are and where all boundaries go. So this week, you're going to look at how you feel in your body, what you believe about your body, where you belong with your body, what you think about your body, what you have accepted about your body, good or bad, what your faith, where your faith lies, and what your commitments are to your body and your embodiment of life. And so this is a heavy, heavy health kind of moment. If you have been ignoring symptoms, this is a time to go to the doctor, absolutely, because you will discover what is wrong with the body, and you want to know what is wrong now. You don't want to mess around with this energy whatsoever. But at the same time, this goes into the lifestyle that you choose, the foods that you eat, the amount of sleep that you have, all the above. And so it's really the beginning of a lifestyle transit, but very, very intimate and private, dealing with you and your body and any shame you might have around that sort of thing as well. So be conscious, be kind, and be nice to yourself in all regards, all right? Now, so in that first week, it's going to be uncomfortable growth when it comes to looking at health issues. And I recommend that you get professionals and you go on board with it correctly, that you follow up every hunch and you don't really turn away from anything that feels kind of off. This is not a time to do that. The universe is not playing games. Now, that said, Mercury, your ruling planet, which is trining Neptune at 29 degrees Pisces, says that you will be thinking about your overall lifestyle and how it plays into your career direction. And you're probably going to realize that your career is going to put some challenges on you, where you're heavily tested in your career, having faith in your career, having faith it'll be all right. You might have to work with a party that didn't work well before, so maybe being put back into a place where a bad job was or something like that, and being called to make it different. But the point is to be mindful of your lifestyle and how it contributes to your career potential. What the astrology is saying is you might be locked down in lifestyle. You might not be having enough allowance to be able to succeed like the way you need to or want to in career, or it might be the opposite. It might be that your lifestyle is so grand, your career doesn't have a chance either. Either way, it's time to look at how lifestyle and career go together. And then the final thing with Mercury, your planet moving into Sagittarius, it does mean that your mind now goes to your me rich. Yes, you have, of course, this relationship to your body, and you either healthy or you're not healthy or whatnot. But what's the philosophy you use when you approach yourself? What kind of methodology do you use? What school of thought are you running? That, I think, is something that Geminis have not really calculated, haven't come up with a real philosophy for how to treat themselves. So I believe that it's going to be this combined effect where you are, in essence, re-examining how you live in the moment in your body. And then in the background, you're also doing some cross-examination on your philosophy of life and your philosophy of how to live at large. And either way, because it's Mercury doing most of the work, I think you're going to get to the answer. Hello, Moonchild. Welcome to another fun, fabulous week. Well, Scorpio for you is very intimate, my friend. It has to do with your personal boundaries with your inner child, where you draw the line and where you don't. And so you have Scorpio in the 5th house, the house of inner child, which means that Cancers can be extremely close to themselves or extremely not, just as they can be extremely close to their children or extremely not. There is, of course, that dark side of the moon where you will sort of turn off your influence or intention to something and go completely cold on a child or something or a part of yourself that normally had been very warm to. But now for you to really move forward in the new era, you've got to draw some boundaries about what's important to your inner child and what you're going to defend and stand up for altogether, always. Now, I believe that a lot of Cancer problems with romance has been to the fact that, they had oftentimes a childhood that was difficult, where they were the ones left nurturing their parents instead of being nurtured themselves. And so it sort of created this strange attitude about children at large, especially the inner child within them. And so you could say that some Cancers, although very affectionate and nice, also can be very cold and detached because they have that capability, Scorpio in the 5th house, to cut off from their inner child. Well, if you're wanting true love, if you're wanting the things in life that I know you do want, you're going to have to really embrace that inner child and give him or her a real big hug and bring it into your safety over the course of this week. So you'll be really looking at where your lines are with your inner child and how much you really pay attention to protect your inner child when you're in conversation or connected to anyone at large. Now, the second part of this that we want to talk about is as you are drawing these boundaries with your inner child, at the same time, we have Mercury at the very top. Your mind is contemplating a big picture idea, like maybe getting married or creating something like a product or service, or flying around the world, something your heart's always wanted. The mind's way up there in that capacity, but it's trining at the end of this week, Neptune at 29 degrees Pisces. That means that your life purpose and what you think your life is about will be tested. And what will be tested against is your heart. Yes, you may want to do this in your life, but how enjoyable is it? How much is your heart engaged? How creative are you when you go down that path? Those are the questions that are necessary to ask yourself. And overall, I feel that the feelings that come up will be unavoidable. In fact, the fact that the things reverse for you energetically in the retrograde, when it comes to your inner child and Mercury in your inner child, when Mercury retrogrades back to that space, you're going to have to rethink what your dreams are anyway. So you might as well just go for everything your heart wants, not hold back, have any doubts and whatnot, and see, in the retrograde if it was appropriate or not. Because I don't think Cancers have really championed their inner child like they're supposed to have, all right? And that Neptune has to do with purpose at large. I think another thing that have happened to Cancers is that they always feel like their purpose is for someone else, to be of spiritual service to someone else. And that's not the truth. The truth is this Mercury in your house of inner child will help you to realize what you're here to do. You're here to be here for that child and express that child's wishes. Last thing I want to point out is when Mercury goes into Sagittarius, you're now going to look at your philosophy of life. And you're going to find that you set yourself up for a lot of these problems because of the philosophy you have about life and health and whatnot. You're a little bit too scattered. There's too many theories in the room, and I don't think you're really focused on the target. Those are all Sagittarius ideals that you'll be thinking about with daily life next week. Hello, Your Royal Majesty. Welcome back. And I have to say, you're now a leader of love, but it's time to prove it this week with the Sun in Scorpio. Why is that? Well, Scorpio energy for you is how you treat your own feelings. You are used to coming from a well-guarded castle, frankly. But most Leos are reincarnated royalty. They're not royalty this time. They just remember being royalty. And very few of you came with your entire general and your army and everything else, right? And so what you're realizing is that you have to protect your feelings on your own. Now, a lot of Leos do this by simply hiding or having low res boundaries, which means you just keep people away from you and you don't deal with it at all. But it's time now for you to have a complexity of power by having a complexity of boundaries with your own feelings. So as we go through steps 2 through 8, you're going to make some decisions about why it is you feel the way you feel and decide that you want to feel differently on the inside about yourself. By the way, all you have to do is decide that you want to feel differently. You don't have to actually have earned it. You don't have to actually even know what it takes to do that. You just have to decide and start allowing your feelings to be guarded by these boundaries. Now, you may be harboring in negative feelings from your childhood that have to be released. You may be allowing people to walk right through you and over you still, not really enforcing your boundaries. Or you might yourself become a bit of an overstater when it comes to boundaries and conscious and be coming from a defensive posture. Whatever the case is, it doesn't have to be intense. It just has to be clear and concise and understandable to everyone else. Now, that said, we're waiting now for a little work to happen when it comes to your Neptune energy in Pisces. Mercury is in the high degrees of Scorpio. So that means that while you're trying to work on just feeling like a baby, your mind is thinking about needing a whole new house, needing a whole new neighborhood, needing a whole new security plan. So your mind is contemplating perhaps a whole new security for your house, your home, and your family. But Mercury is going to try Neptune retrograde in Pisces, which means that you also are going to be put in touch with the idea that you have to transform your life in a big way still. You're not done. You're not out of the water. There's some final changes that have to happen. They'll come intuitively, but they have to happen when it comes to how you manage your boundaries in the highest degree so that you can transform your life to go where you want it to go. And what may hold that back is simply the way you think about your family and your home. The fact that you think about security in certain ways keeps you from actually transforming your life in the ways you need to. So it's almost like if we said, hey, we'll transform our life through going to a counselor, but you don't think counselors are emotionally secure, then you would not do it and you would not be able to transform yourself. So your fears of being emotionally secure are preventing you from changing, is what we're trying to say. And then lastly, when Mercury goes into Sagittarius, this is actually a good thing for you. This has to do with your own house of love and creativity and expansion. So ultimately, you've got a party starting here. Just count down who knows how long, maybe 1 month, count down 1 month, basically. But with Mercury in these early stages of Sagittarius, it does mean that your mind is getting reacquainted with your inner child and the philosophies in which you live in your inner child. And because Mercury is in retrograde shadow, it means that everything you're thinking about with your inner child will probably be thought 2 more times. So I want you to know you don't have to get it right away. You just have to get as close as you can to your inner child, as close as you can to the actual truth of things. And I know probably whatever that comes out to be, it'll be something that you ultimately don't feel like can actually happen. That's okay. That's another thing we'll work on is believing. But at the end of the day, it will happen, my friend. And so it's time now to go ahead and let yourself dream. Don't worry about it. The Mercury retrograde will get you make you go over it at least twice. And so by the end of this, I think by January, you're going to be on to your personal dreams. Hello, my virtuosos, the Virgos. For you, Sun and Scorpio comes down to where you draw the line in your mind. That's right. Where things might get uncomfortable is when you start to admit to yourself just how dark you can be or cold or really unbearably indifferent. And that is an issue for you, my friend, where you draw the line. Now, that's what allows you to be so darn tough in the world and command your presence that you do. But unfortunately, it's probably working against you more than it's for you at this point. Those boundaries are probably designed to survive a childhood or a horrible first or second marriage, and they weren't necessarily designed to bring your thriving of yourself. You need to have these boundaries expanded now to include love and appreciation and encouragement and all that stuff you give everyone else in the world. I don't know if you're giving yourself on the inside. So the Sun in Scorpio means a heartfelt change of boundaries of what's allowed and what's not allowed when it comes to talking to yourself on the inside. Now, with the trine we were talking about, Mercury in the high degrees of Scorpio is calling for you to have a big picture, a new big picture point of view. And that Mercury is trining Neptune, which is dipped back into the house of relationships. So now that you have gone through the full spectrum of karma and relationships, you might find that that mind combined with the way you approach relationships still needs to do some changes in how you see yourself karmically in relationships or how you see yourself spiritually in relationships. This might be that you're not giving yourself compassion, or perhaps you're not being patient with yourself, or perhaps you're not assuming that everything will work out. Faith. Maybe faith is not being applied. So as the week progresses, particularly Wednesday, expect a change in your thinking that also relates to a change in your relationships. Then finally, when Mercury dips into Sagittarius, it's going to mean that you now start to look at a new story about your feelings. See, your feelings have been through all sorts of different stories because you have been clearing all your life certain issues that were in childhood. And the reason why you survive these feelings is because you tend to be philosophical about them. Some days you have this theory and some days you have that theory. But the story you tell yourself about how you really feel needs to be looked at. You may not be using your heart to determine what you believe. You may be using evidence in the story or characters in the story, or maybe you're still using your mother or lack of a mother or lack of a nurturer. Whatever the case is, it's time to rewrite the story in the way you nurture yourself and treat yourself all together. So if you put them together, a new story and philosophy about how to nurture will lead to a better way of communicating to yourself, which will lead to a better approach to relationships altogether. Because what's good for you will be good for everyone. And for the Libras, our fellow peace artists. Hello, Libra. When it comes to Scorpio, you are going to get really down and dirty and intimate about the way you value yourself. The truth of the matter is where you draw lines with value is not fair to you, and you know it. And I don't know what you're putting into it beyond fair to you or not, but the lines you draw as to whether or not you give yourself credit or don't give yourself credit, this is what is most damaged and still, let's say, inflamed from your lifetime. So it's time to use your feelings to determine where the line is, not your mind. I know that's hard. You're an air sign. You want to have a literal value to it. You want to be able to compute it on a computer. But, that's not how it works for the rest of the signs. Most signs use a feeling to determine where the line actually is. And so, yes, in your mind, they're bluffing it. But that's the thing. You've been bluffing it when it comes to your self-worth. So redefining where the line is as far as what you deserve, as far as love, compassion, believing in yourself, giving yourself the benefit of the doubt, being on the right side of yourself. And of course, the thoughts you have about your value at large, those need to be looked at and audited as well. Now, as we move on to the trine, we have Neptune moving into the high degrees of Pisces, which means your lifestyle is going to once again be tested, and you're going to be looking at maybe a refined approach to your spiritual mission in daily life, coming into a new mission for what life will be every day while you're alive and what you do day to day, your spiritual approach to life day to day. But Mercury in the high heavens of Scorpio also has all sorts of thoughts about what you deserve on an abundance level. And what the astrology shows is that there's some sort of break of the chain of command between what your mind is asking for abundance and what you spiritually feel you deserve in a given life. So you've got to work out any kind of blocks between what you want in your mind and what you feel spiritually you deserve. Honestly, what you spiritually deserve is what you deserve. You know what I'm saying? And the mind and that value is really calculatable by any sort of circumstance at the end of the day. Then when the moon moves into Sagittarius, you're going to find that you now are starting to think differently about how you think. Mercury in Sag says the story you tell yourself is outdated. We're talking about the story you tell yourself on the inside. In fact, if you're still telling your story that starts with your abuse as a child, or telling your story about how you pulled yourself up by your bootstraps and all those sorts of things, you're outdated. That's not where you are right now. You want to look to see, are you thinking thoughts to yourself based on old stories of the past? Or are you thinking to yourself about stories that are becoming real now in the present? That is where the line is, my friend. And I argue that when Mercury retrogrades to this place, you're going to find that you have to rewrite this story at least 3 times, this one being the first one. Hello, Scorpio. Happy birthday to you. I hope you have a great one this year. For the Scorpios, the peaceful warriors, well, this thinking process and change of heart has to do with really the way you respond to yourself. Your self-responses are inappropriate for the future you want to have. And I understand why. If you're a Scorpio now and you're alive in the 80s, you've had a hell of a life. Pluto went through your own sign. That is really brutal as far as a childhood is concerned, or whatever the time of the life that was for you. And so as a result, you built all sorts of responses to yourself that were probably above and beyond, maybe overreacting, perhaps maybe emotionally letting yourself get too upset about something. And so it's time to kind of loosen up a bit on yourself. It's time to find boundaries that are much more compassionate. So drawing the line about what's acceptable in a response to yourself. We're talking about the smallest response to yourself, by the way, whether or not you get up and take your medicine, whether or not you put yourself down, whether or not you encourage yourself. These tiny little moments are what you are rewriting. And believe it or not, they're going to change everything. Once you're nicer to you, the world will be nicer to you. That's right. If you're having situations where people are not treating you well, it's because you're not treating yourself well in those private little moments. So this is what makes you so angry about certain people, is because how dare they treat you the way you treat you? Only you have the right to put yourself down, right? Now, with that said, Neptune going into Pisces also hits a tender spot for you. This is retrograding back into the area of personal dreams, love, romance, children, the big, big things that everyone wishes for. You are meant to have what your heart wishes for in this lifetime. You are. It's the past lives that you did not have what your heart wished for, and you sacrificed in the past lives and did not get what you wanted. That was the old story. How much of that story is still in play right now? How much of that story are you actually counting on? And with Mercury in the high degrees of Scorpio, the way you think about your character is still based on this failure from the past to get what your heart wants. It's not based on your heart getting what it wants. And so it's time to rethink the way you look in the world, the character you put out there, that suit that you put on for work, whatever that is sort of based on the old broken heart. It's not based on the new, you'll get everything you want heart. And so I think there's a lot of thinking to do there and a lot of forgiveness and letting things go, to say the least. Then when Mercury goes into Sagittarius, this is a big one because Scorpios have not earned what they deserve. That's because your philosophy around earnings and worth are a little outdated. Every Scorpio I talk to is kind of futile, honestly, when it comes to what good and bad is and that should be rewarded or not rewarded with treasure or not. I'm not kidding. So your philosophy about whether you deserve it, whether you're valuable, all this type of thing, this is outdated. You're using an old dictionary, using old English spelling, and it just has to change. Write the story that you wish it was, okay? And I know that sounds like bullshit from a Scorpio perspective, but that's what life is about. This whole reality is what is made up. You might as well make up a good one. Hello, my Sagittarians, our unicorns of the Zodiac. Well, Scorpio for you is a bit more difficult than the average sign because it deals with whether or not you give yourself faith or not. That's where the boundary is, and that's what's going to get very uncomfortable. The truth of the matter is, I rarely see Sagittarius claim faith in themselves. Now, I know if they put a gun to your head, yes, you would have faith, but we're talking about all the little small statements, the little moments where you refuse the compliment or you assume the wrong will happen or you sort of joke with yourself in a funny manner that, the anvil's about to drop on your head. These things create reality, I'm afraid. And because you're not giving yourself a solid faith to begin with, the universe is not putting faith in you either. You may be missing out on opportunities where a boss could give you a raise or you could get a big client or a big project onto your team or all sorts of advancements. But because you play that little game of not giving yourself that benefit of the doubt and assuming the best, assuming faithful, things end up collapsing as a result. Now, Mercury in the high heavens of that area of Scorpio says that you're also thinking about your thoughts about God, the universe, and everything, and your placement of God, the universe, and everything. And what you're doing is with that Mercury trining Neptune, which is now dipped back into Pisces, in your fourth house, your house of your area of emotional security, you're now questioning once again whether or not you feel secure or can maintain a sense of security despite your big issues with faith. Now, the truth is that no, you will not be able to maintain a sense of feeling secure if you don't think the universe is behind you. If you don't assume the universe is behind you, if you don't demand, they say, the universe is behind you, this is necessary for you to be able to go forward. So be very conscious this week about how faith turns into personal dreams. And that if you really want something in your heart, is it that you're undermining it with your faith and your thinking? Then finally, Mercury moving into your sign does mean that Sagittarius are going to come out of a bit of a quiet spell. You've been quiet for nearly a month now with all this energy in the 12th house. But now Mercury will come into your first house, and that means you're going to start to think about the story you tell yourself as a motivator. That's right. Sagittarius tell themselves a story to motivate themselves. And they also tell themselves stories about themselves to help motivate others too, by the way. But the stories you tell yourself, the astrology says, are way old school. They're based on what you were, not what you are becoming. And so it's time for a new story, maybe even time for a new story structure. Certainly time for new words that are a bit more flowery and fun. And that's the key. If you're not having fun in your story, if you're not a story of something magical or fun or cool and out of the box, then right off the bat, you're undercutting the magic of who you are, which is unlimited possibilities. So when you choose what to say, when you choose what story to recycle inside yourself, try this week one that has a happy ending and has a plot we've never seen before. Welcome back, Capricorns, our captains. Well, energetically, captivators actually is our term. When it comes to Scorpio, that's what I was getting at, you energetically use Scorpio energy to carve out basically what you are known for in society. You're very black and white about what you are and what you aren't. You do Windows, you don't do Windows. You do PayPal, you don't do PayPal. You have these absolutes. And the thing is that when it comes to what you expect yourself to be in the world, you are very harsh as well. Your boundaries are inflexible, and they're not based on feeling good. They're based on power, only power, from what I can tell. So you base who you're supposed to be in the world on cold, business-like, power-based situations. And as a result, I don't think you're bringing your best to the table. I certainly haven't seen Capricorns come out of their shell. Even though Pluto went through your sign, I haven't noticed much. You guys really were resilient, right? So it's time to really consider what you do with yourself in the world and where the line is based on what feels right, what feels organic, what feels safe, what feels natural, what feels like home. Those are all things you want to look for when it comes to how you've put yourself in the world. Now, Mercury in the high heavens of Scorpio is also thinking about your big picture, your career, your legacy, your effect on the world, your success of your brand, the penetration of your products and services into the marketplace, these big things. But Neptune having now moved back into Pisces means that you're also at the same time relooking at certain attitude issues you've had karmically. You've had certain karmic attitudes that ultimately were setting yourself up for failure. The most popular one, was actually guilt. Capricorns can tend to judge themselves into guiltopia, where all you are living is in this world of guilt in your mind because you're actually finding yourself being judgmental to yourself, harsher than even are other people. So it's time to look at how your guilt trips on yourself or falling into old spiritual patterns that lack faith end up creating this person you are in the world, end up forcing yourself to be that person in the world, and end up preventing the world from seeing who you really are. Because you feel guilty, we feel like there's something you should be guilty about. And so it just perpetuates that way. Now, when Mercury moves out of Scorpio and into Sagittarius, things will get interesting because you're going to have to change the story you tell yourself about faith. So why do you have faith in yourself? What's the story anyways? Whatever it is, it's over. No longer can you use that story about why you have faith in yourself. It's time for a new story to tell yourself about why you must now have faith. Include details of what has happened in the last 5 to 7 years. Include growth that you've seen in yourself personally, spiritually, not in business and actually in other things that are economic. And really look to see where your story is really selling the old story. And because of that, because if you're telling yourself the old story, this is really what keeps you stuck. I met many Capricorns, I got to say, who have not progressed as far as I thought they would have after Pluto left their sign. And I think part of it's because you're still telling the old story inside yourself. You're still thinking the old big picture of your attitude, and you're still not having faith in a comfortable way. Hello, my friendly Aquarians. We call you happily the Forerunners. And now it's time to run forward, my friends, when it comes to your career. The astrology shows that Aquariuses are not necessarily reaching their potential because of the boundaries you have around self-discipline. You've got these very strict rules about when you do, when you don't do, when you deliver, when you don't deliver. And I don't know if these rules were based on how you feel or based on what you perceive the world to want, or maybe you're being a rebel and not doing it that way because you have to always be a rebel and you have to be an independent. But whatever it is, it's not healthy. The boundaries you have around when to work or not, and how much to chew or not chew, what you're aiming for, the decisions you make for yourself, all of these have inappropriate boundaries. The boundaries are based, I think, on power, and they're based on revenge to some degree because you've had such a hard ride in some cases. They're not based on what would be the best thing for your heart to proliferate at work and in your career. And so you're looking at, with Sun and Scorpio, a new career transit where you're going to upgrade your career by changing your boundaries and transforming where the line is. Now, that said, Mercury's already way ahead when it comes to career. You've been thinking about career for the last 3 weeks almost, 2 weeks basically. And what this says is that your mind is still operating in the big heavens of career and legacy without having fixed the beginning. That's something you should know. If you're hard on yourself, you're not going to have realistic goals for your overall career in the future. But Mercury is also trining Neptune in Pisces, which goes back to step 29. And this means that you're also looking at some karmic issues around abundance. Why is it that you have not been able to manifest the abundance you deserve? Now, I think it's because you have been hard on yourself. You've been critical. You've been unforgiving of yourself, unforgiving of your mistakes. And because of all that unforgiveness, yes, that's how things went sour. Your karma hit the pocketbook big time. But with Mercury trying this, you're now going to look at this from a new perspective. If you ease up on your demands of yourself in your career, then you might ease up on your demands of yourself with money. Now, that may go, hey, well, I still want money. Well, yes, you will have money, but money is attracted to you. You can't be hoarding down hard on it. You have to be opening up and being open to everything. I think if you're more open to yourself and your career decisions and your self-discipline, you'll be open to far much more when it comes to your potential to make money and really drive home those profits. Now, that said, when Mercury goes into Sagittarius, you're going to realize something. You're going to realize that your story about who you are in the world is not true. First of all, it's not true because you haven't been in the age of Aquarius. So regardless, you're changing your reputation, whether you like it or not, because we're moving into 5D, and that's what you're the queen of. So you have to change the story you tell yourself. But more importantly, the story you've told yourself are really based on your failures of the past, like everyone else. And so it's now time to put yourself out there in the first place with that sort of old story erased. Think about the story of success for you. What is that story of success? And when you understand the story, then how would you put yourself out there in the world to be seen in the first place if you know the story has a happy ending with success? Welcome back, Pisces, our fellow dream weavers of the universe. Well, for you, Pisces, the sun in Scorpio has to do with your belief in yourself. And ultimately, although you are really whimsical when it comes to where to draw the line, with you having Libra in the eighth house, you're actually very sharp, mean, and kind of cruel when it comes to whether or not you believe in yourself or don't. I've seen Pisces just one mistake in life or two, and suddenly they're not believable. They're not investable. And I think the problem there is that you're applying old past life Christian and Judaic belief structures onto yourself because most of you have had a history in that regard. So it's time to open up and ask yourself only one thing. If your heart feels it's true, then you put a boundary around it and you say it's true. So you cannot base truth in what you believe on any facts, any history, any resume, any karma, anything, but whether your heart feels it's true. And you may think this is a bullshit artist, but it's not. It's actually just an artist. We are artists when we create our reality. And so, yes, we can create any picture that we want. You're starting to learn that. Now, while you're stumbling over whether or not you believe in yourself, the mind is way ahead in Scorpio, trying to calculate what your life purpose is, the big, big questions. And here's what's interesting. Neptune moves back into your sign in Pisces. That means that your character is going to go through one more makeover, one more reconsideration of just who you are and the words I am. That's going to be re-examined, and it's being coordinated this week with your life's purpose. In other words, you're trying to bring more purpose into the scope of who you are moment to moment, day to day. Now, for that to happen, you've got to follow through and be less critical on your boundaries around knowledge and wisdom, and base it on what you feel in your heart is true, not based on what you can prove or write an essay about. Now, when that happens with Mercury being in Scorpio, it then moves into Sagittarius, and that means that you're going to change your philosophy and the story about self-motivation. You've always been motivated for certain reasons because it's fulfilled a certain story. You like a story. In fact, you want to leave behind on the planet a story. You're the only sign that's really cared most about having a story about you, really, honestly, and your work you've done. And so the problem is that the story to motivate yourself in the first place, to make that decision, is a story of the old school and the old guard. You're telling yourself an old nursery rhyme, basically, that has a big bad wolf that seems to always win. It's now time to reinvent that story. When you're about to make a decision, come up with a new philosophy for why. When you're about to do something for your career, come up with a new story as to what's really happening with the main character. Try rebooting the story altogether, giving your film a new title, whatever the case is. If your heart feels it's true, that it is true. And because you're working on belief structure with the sun in Scorpio, and then Sagittarius works on belief structure with career, all this month really goes together. Quite frankly, you are rethinking and redrawing the boundaries of faith in yourself. Faith in your belief in yourself, which leads to a new purpose. A purpose is tied to a new character you want to become. And this will then lead to a new story about your success and why you got it. You're going to write a story of success, and I believe you're going to actually live it. Well, friends, that's all we have for this episode today. But I want to remind you that Namaste Today, Soul Horoscopes, and the Zodiac Weather are all sponsored by siriusjoy.academy, where you can find detailed life coaching day after day. Where in this show, we just kind of briefly tell you the big theme of the week. At siriusjoy.academy, we give you a 20-minute pep talk every day, diving into the deep details. Plus, our software allows you to have certain information about yourself that you wouldn't otherwise have. And we do it in a way that doesn't make you have to learn astrology. We just tell you like it is. Give it a try today for just $3.99. We've got new features coming out and all sorts of new talent coming. It's an amazing place. It's the happiest place on the internet, honestly, the happiest. Also coming up, it's not too late for the 40 Days of Truth and Purpose. You may not know the story, but we decided we wanted to tell a story and help you understand yourself in the one time of the year you can't lie to yourself, Scorpio. So we set up this 40-day journaling exercise, which is guided by me with extracurricular things. And what you do is every day you just write a little bit of journal about something you see in your astrology chart. Now, I know what you're thinking. You don't know how to read an astrology chart. Don't worry. We've got that covered also. We'll teach you how to run a chart, and we'll also have a special cipher that allows you to decode the chart according to the step system. Each day, you'll learn a little bit more about yourself, and after a while, you'll find your true purpose. I got to tell you, anytime I meet a person out in the public, they tell me if they've taken the 40-day program, that this is the best program that changed their life because they finally figured out what their purpose is. The number one question I get in readings. Now, also, you might be questioning, what the hell's going on with Earth? Well, I've got a lecture for you. It's called New World Order. I'm doing this lecture and also workshop coming up here. And this is going to be a lecture that talks about the astrology and what's happening in the next 6 to 9 months. I personally think that shit's going to hit the fan, honestly. And it's not in the way we think it is. In fact, it's not that it's a new NEW world order. It's that we're creating something that we once knew. I'm going to talk about that, ancient lands. And then in the workshop, you bring in your chart and I'll give you some points to look at to discover what your role will be in this major history moment in time. It's just an amazing moment to be alive. But do you know why you're here? You'll want to see New World Order. To find out more about that, you can get on the wait list or buy actually today. I think they're live today at newworldorder.xyz. newworldorder.xyz. And for some housekeeping, by the way, this show is going to be changing its name and moving to Sundays. Now, it's not going to be for a little while, but I want you to know that so you can sort of kind of in your mind get used to it. We feel like it'll do much better on Sundays, and it'll be probably Sunday evening, looking at probably at the moment, we're looking at 9 o'clock Eastern and 6 o'clock Pacific, but we're not certain about that. But just draw a circle, start thinking about Sundays and meeting us on Sundays, because that's the way it's looking like for us. Also, if you want to follow us on Facebook, we have a special club where you can hang out and have access to all of our posts and intelligence. That's at siriusjoy.club. And if you're following us on Instagram or X or any other of the major social media, just look for Sirius Joy TV. All right, friends. Well, it's time to be honest with yourself, but don't worry, you don't have to be honest with us. You just have to be honest with yourself. If you're honest with yourself, you can draw a life that you believe in, that you feel like you're in integrity, and you're free of all the old problems. This is the week to be honest, to be loving, and to be self-compassionate. Please do. I'll see you next week.
Coming up on Sirius Joy, Master Astrologer Robbie Hunt is airing her last self-study haul this Wednesday. Join Robbie for her discussion on the gift of your sun and how owning it changes the world. The best in enlightened entertainment, only on Sirius Joy TV.